Hi, and welcome to another episode of Examining Medicine from Traditional to Alternative and Beyond. I am your host, Dr. Franchell Hamilton, and we are in the Limelight TV. Today, I have a special guest, Brian Berneman. Brian is co founder of Conscious Action and starting a movement for people to get more balanced and more along the lines of where they want their path to go. He is co-founder of this company, and his whole goal is to help people find the path that they need to be on and become a better version of themselves. And that's why I wanted to bring him on this show. This is a health show, but Brian helps people incorporate all kinds of areas in their life to become a whole person. And I think that's important. Even though we're talking about health, again, it's not necessarily the absence of disease, but it's to become balanced. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about finding balance in conscious living from our expert. Thank you, Brian, for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. As you say, really important topics that we can all, even me, keep on learning about them and doing. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wanted to bring this to consciousness, so to speak, because I'm a big proponent in my own programs. Everybody knows I do predominantly weight loss, but I do and manage so many other medical problems. And it's really important for me that people kind of live in the moment and this and bring everything to conscious, or what I also call mindfulness. So this is kind of what you do. So tell me, what is your definition of conscious living?
Yeah, so thank you for that. There's so many different ways of talking about it. And I think that each of us need to come to what does that mean. For me, conscious living means, and you actually chose the right words there. For me, consciousness and present. For me, the more that I'm able to be present in myself, understand my connection with my inner world, and understand my connection with the outer world, and that is other beings, the environment, this planet Earth. When I can be in connection with everything, then I can start to live my life from a place of choosing consciously how I am in relationship with that. And to give the example, we tend to, as a society, live disconnected. Most of us don't know our feelings. Most of us don't know how our body functions. Most of us don't understand how our mind functions. And most of us don't understand that
Yeah.
we, you, me, and everybody else, we are connected. We are one. And if I'm doing something in my life that is not good for you, I'm doing something that is not good for me. Even though at some point it might seem that I'm actually doing something for me, it's the
Yeah.
understanding that there's a sense of unity and oneness, even though at the same time we are separate. And the more that I can bring that into this present moment here now, the more that I can actually respond to life with what it needs and not the conditioned programming that I might have.
That's interesting. That's an interesting concept. And so can you give an example of what that means? You say we're disconnected, not only disconnected sometimes within ourselves, which I think people can understand, but also with our environment and with what's going on around us. Can you give an example of that?
Yes, definitely. So, for example, I grew up in Argentina. I grew up as a typical kid, mainstream, with all of the different things in terms of TV and sports
Mhm.
and going to the shopping mall and buying and consuming. And at that time, I didn't know how my actions in terms of consumerism were actually impacting the Mother Earth, like this planet that we all live and we are part of. We are not
Yeah.
separate from her. And now, especially with, I know that climate change can be a big topic, but it's easy to see within some areas how our consumption, for example, of a t-shirt or any clothing item that I own, the amount of resources that needs to actually be created and the people that needs to create it, how they are treated in the conditions that they are actually making those clothes are so bad that I now consciously cannot participate in that. I cannot participate in the fast fashion, in the cheap clothing, in the clothing that is not organic and sustainably and ethically made. And that is because I started to connect more with why I care. And also, I was educated, fortunately, about what is actually happening with that. And when I can relate more from that place of me buying a t-shirt actually has an impact of some on someone's life and on the resources that we're taking from the planet, then I can start to actually realize I am connected with that. And if they are suffering, I am suffering.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. So that's how you have learned how to connect, say, with someone you don't even know, just by how you consume stuff. And I would argue the same can be, right? You're right. Climate change, that's not necessarily what, but it's big right now. And so your choice to do solar or gas or whatever directly affects the planet that we're all living in, and it directly affects whoever's on the other end operating that. So I can understand how being aware of that can change your behaviors. So, how did this come about for you? So, how does someone live conscious, more conscious specifically to themselves and what's going on even with themselves? Like how does somebody do that?
This is so important because I always say everything starts with you. Everything starts with me.
I agree.
This is about opening myself to curiosity and to questioning, not seeking answers, but being open to questions to see what actually resonates with me. What is the things that I have been conditioned, and how am I just taking them for what they are? And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a really nice, beautiful family, being loved by my parents. And not everyone has that, but the fact that my parents gave me that space, and as well that my parents were on their own journey and they brought that into my home, that allowed me to do that and not to have as much conditioning as many other people have. But saying that, I still need to go and question my life and go and do the practices that resonated with me. I was completely out of touch with my feelings, and I started doing a lot of practices like yoga and some other dance movement practices to get me back into connecting with my being.
Well,
And
how
with
did you
that,
know that? How did you know you were out of connection with your feelings, for example? Like, how would even somebody even know that?
I didn't know, yet people, especially my parents, would tell me when I was younger, especially when I was a young teenager, that I was
Okay.
bottling down all of my feelings, that I wasn't communicating how I was. They were like, "Are you okay?" And I was always saying, like that I was okay. I have no idea what I really, if I was okay or not, because I didn't know what was happening. And I think that my parents at that moment realized, that I wasn't. They would tell me, "Are you sure? Are you just not
Okay.
being communicating it?" And I was like, "No, I'm okay." And I think that it's because I wasn't connected with myself. And it
Yes.
wasn't until I started exploring some of these different practices that some of them are what we would call spiritual and some of them weren't spiritual, that actually showed me like, oh wow, this is new, this is interesting. I had never felt this, I had never experienced this. And with that, that gave me the understanding that what I used to have was a complete disconnection from my body and my experiencing.
That's really interesting. I mean, and you're lucky that you have parents that are that engaged, because most people honestly probably do not have that ability. Not that their parents aren't loving per se, but they don't know or they can't connect in that way, saying, no, you're not okay, something is off. There's so many people out there that when asked they're okay by their loved ones, the answer is an automatic yes, even though they know or they may even be able to feel that they're not okay. How do you coach people? Because you do have this coaching program to find out, to kind of tap into their inner selves and realize if they're good in these areas. Like I call this kind of self-care and self-maintenance, like a check-in. And I think this is vital to long-term permanent changes, like whether it's your health, whether it's social, your attitude, your positive thinking. I think you have to be able to check in with yourself. But say you didn't have those types of parents, how do people know when they're not okay? What are some signs that they can look for?
Usually I say there's two different paths to people wanting to find that space, or find, or coming to work with me, or going to work with someone else and trying to start this journey. And one is when they hit complete rock bottom.
Okay.
That is one of the paths, is completely rock bottom, and then it's like, okay, like this definitely wasn't working, I need to do something else. And then
Yeah.
there's some people that realize life shouldn't be this stressful, life shouldn't be this hard, and they are not finding that balance. They have a lot of the things that we in society would say this is a successful life, the work, the money, the family, but somehow it's not actually well. And
Mhm.
when people find that, a lot of times they start to want to find some answers and want to find some guidance. And that's what I work mostly with people, is just being able to see where are you and where do you want to go and how do we bridge that gap. And for
Yeah.
every client, it's always different. Yes, of course, there's certain elements that I use because those are the tools that I learned and those are the tools that I share. But with every single client, it's basically what do they need. Because some of my clients, for example, come and they are super wrapped up in their heads, and we need to get them to understand more the physical and the somatic aspect of their life. They
Yeah.
need to connect more with their feelings, they need to connect more with their breath. Yet
Mhm.
we need to work a lot here in their heads, because if they are not working with their heads, and that is the main issue that they have, then they are not going to be able to get out of that. And then there's other people that all that they want is more of what we would call a spiritual connection. So we do more practices to open the flow of that energy, and that is where they want to go. They are more on that path of awakening to a spiritual life, whatever that means for them.
Yeah.
And we try to work towards that space. Then there's more people that want to find more balance. So, for example, like one of my clients, he came because he was unhappy at work. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. And he was stressed because his wife was pregnant with a second baby, and that relationship was suffering because he wasn't happy at work and he wasn't able to be there with his kid. And he knew, I have a second one on the way, I need to change.
Yeah.
And we worked a lot on how to deal with work. How could he be at work? And by working with that, after a few months, he called me once we finished working together. He called me and he said the baby was born, and that he thanked me because he was so happy that his relationship was in such a good place because we were able to work with all of the stresses from work.
Yeah.
And that, I think that it's part of that balance in life that I'm so fortunate to be able to see and to guide people to and to empower themselves to actually
Yeah.
do that.
No, I agree. And I see a lot of my own patients who struggle with work. I have seen in my own practice, medical problems comes from stress at work. I call that area of life environment. So I kind of split it up, and you probably do, into like different aspects. And I'm like, okay, we need to tackle one thing at a time. And so a lot of people carry stress from their environment, whether, and you brought up a good point, it's their relationships, relationships at home and relationships at work. That matters. That matters in your overall health and how you manage that and handle that, and your awareness and mindfulness of that matter so much. Because I know you're in New Zealand, but here in America, like, it's work is a big deal. We work a lot, and a lot of us don't pay enough attention to kind of some of our other, or build up some of our other relationships. So kind of how do people, and I know you work with this too, even for that example you gave, how do you balance life and work? Like, how do you help people to balance that? Something I guess maybe anybody can use when they're struggling with relationships at work and relationships at home that's honestly causing stress in their life.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think that the first thing is acknowledging where they are. So acknowledging that I might be stressed, I might not have the best relationships. That the first step is always acknowledging where we are,
Yes. Yep.
because once we acknowledge it, then there's the space for deciding, do I want that to stay like that, or do I want to be able to create a change? And then one of the main things for me, and this is the interesting thing, I help my clients see that their life is one life. Yes, we have different arenas. Yes, we have the different environments, as you were saying. We work, we have our friends, we have our community, we have perhaps a partner or a family, but all of that is just one. So there's one Brian, there's just one life. When I understand that, I can start to understand that one aspect of my life will actually have an impact on everything else, because everything else is just one. Yet, how do we work with that? When I work with my clients, I start by getting them to realize, how are they showing up? How are they showing up when they, for example, get from work to home? Are they doing anything to let that cycle of work and the next cycle that is home, are they doing
Mhm.
something to allow them to, in a sense, finish the energy and the mindset of I'm at work, whether that is for now stressful or not, or where they want to be or not? How can they finish that cycle and allow the next cycle? And a lot of times I tell with some of my clients, especially at the beginning, if they are driving or if they go, in public transport home, take that
Yeah.
time or take 5 minutes on that, just to sit. And whether one would call that meditation or not, it doesn't matter. It's just taking the
Yeah.
time to take a couple of long, deep breaths to allow that experience to finish and to show up where you are now without carrying that baggage of that stress
Yeah.
or whatever you're
That's
taking
good.
with you. So
Yeah.
allowing each moment to be its moment without carrying the thing that came before. And this, as you were saying before, being mindful and having awareness is one of the biggest things. So working a lot on ourselves to understand, how are we doing that? How am I carrying over this space to the next space? And do I
Yeah.
want to do that? And sometimes I do want to do that, because sometimes, there's so much energy and things were flowing so well that I'm like, I want to carry this to the next. So it's not
Yes.
about just completely disconnecting with that. It's about being more mindful that I'm stepping into a new environment. How do I want to be in that new environment?
Yeah, I really like that idea of showing up because I also kind of echo that. Like, for one, you need, if you want to do anything well, regardless of what area, so to speak, of your one life it's in, you need to be able to show up. You need to be able to show up to that workout class. You need to be able to show up for your wife's important or husband's important function, your kids' baseball or football game, and you need to be present. So I think you made a huge point. Like whenever you're done, because here we do a lot. Like we often carry, and I've been tagged with this too. I'm guilty. Like where I carry often work home with me. It's very easy to do, as especially as a surgeon when you're on call. And I have consciously also made the decision to be present for my family, not on my phone or on the computer while we're all having dinner. You have to make space and make time for that. And I think the transition time that you gave an example of, like in your car, if you're, because here we predominantly drive everywhere, then take deep breaths and know where you're going and where you've left and kind of separate the two. So my other big question is, a lot of people hold on to stress. I personally feel, and you can kind of give us more insight on that. People, when they have stress, I call it like compartmentalizing, and they like hoard it in their bodies. And then from a body standpoint, it can come out as high blood pressure or headaches or chronic pain or all these different things. So, how can conscious living help alleviate the stress? I guess it's kind of a two part. And how can you live without stress? What do you recommend for people?
So the first thing is understanding that you can live without stress. If we don't believe that that's possible, then that won't be possible. So
Exactly. Thoughts. The first thing is the thoughts in your head. We probably need to repeat that. You can live without stress. Perfect.
yes,
Thank you.
and understanding that, one of my teachers used to say tension is normal, stress is not. So tension, it is normal, and we are going to feel tension every single day because life is full of these moments. Our physical body actually needs tension to function. If I don't have tension, I
Hmm.
cannot move. Work, there's going to be challenges. Relationships, there's going to be challenges.
Hmm.
Now, how I am perceiving that and how I'm responding to that, that makes me be stressed or not. I can say from my experience, I used to be a very stressed out person when I was younger. And luckily, through all of these practices and the journey that I have been in, I have been able to, for the past 15 years, not be stressed. And I know the experience was a lot due to changing, yes, my ideas in my mind and my beliefs in my mind, but as well
Yep.
to work a lot with my body. So for most of us, we hold at the beginning, especially most of our stress on our neck and shoulders area.
Yep.
And once we have a lot of that there, we go to the lower back and then we go to the knees. So these are the three areas that most of the stress gets, as you were saying, like in a sense,
Like
compressed. And
trap or
yes,
yeah.
and what do we do? So one of the things that I do a lot is, and this is one of the those quick tips that I usually tell to everyone. I say, if you take anything from this talk, is move your shoulders. Moving your shoulders every single day in whatever shape and form you want to do it. So up and down or circles. I prefer the circles, and doing that multiple times per day. I used to have a post-it on the corner of my computer that said shoulder. So anytime that I was in the computer working, because I worked most of my life, I worked in front of a computer in a desk. I have actually put that there. So then every time that I see that during the day, I move my shoulders, and then once I move my shoulder, if I do that for at least 1 minute, and I invite everyone that is listening to this to move your shoulders, even if you're listening to me, after 1 minute, most people are going to actually have this reaction that if you can see it, it's just that clicking and that moving of the neck, wanting to escape that because there's a lot of tightness there. That shows how much stress we have built up there. Because
Yep.
for me, I don't need to move it. That doesn't mean that I don't need to move yet. I don't need to escape that feeling. So I usually move my shoulders and then I will move my head slowly in some circles or up and down, just to be able to open up this area and to relax this area.
Yeah.
That for me is the best thing that we can do every single day to get us to that place. To be able to stay as well without stress, we need to be more present. The
Yeah.
stress comes from taking the past with us and focusing on potential futures and hypothetical scenarios.
Yep. I
So, the
agree.
more that we learn to connect with this moment now, the easier it is not to develop that stress. And of course, that is really challenging to do. This takes
Yeah.
understanding, this takes time, yet it is possible. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I usually tell to people is the more that you're in your body, being aware of the feelings in your body, being aware of your breath, how it flows, even if you are not doing any specific practice with your breath,
Hmm.
just noticing and being aware of it, that brings you more grounded. That brings you
Yes.
more to the present. The body lives in the present. Yes, it is taking on what I would call blockages or unfinished, unprocessed feelings and experiences. It's taking it with it, but the body actually lives in the present.
Yeah.
So the mind is the one that is living in all of these different spaces. And yes, it's amazing but we need to know how to use our mind and not to allow the mind to use us. So the more that I'm able to actually be present and use my body consciously, being aware of it, whether that is with yoga or meditation, or that's running or swimming or whatever physical activity I want to do, but being aware of what is actually happening in the body as I am doing that takes a lot of that mind stress out of the picture, and then we can start to not build new stress.
Yeah.
And then we can release some of the stress. I use different practices to release some of the stuck energy or stuck feelings, at least not adding new.
No, I agree. This has been very helpful. And I have one last question before we wrap it up. For people who have almost like their mind is racing, they keep focusing on thoughts, almost like more, it's usually negative thoughts. I don't know why so many people are stuck negative. People don't always focus on positive thoughts all the time, which they should, but a lot of people almost focused on negative thoughts. If you were to say, you need to form a new habit, and all they do is can focus on that new habit, and they can't almost kind of get out of that, regardless of what it may be. What do you recommend for people who are trying to make a change but keep focusing on that thing, whatever it is in front of them, instead of kind of being able to move forward?
As a background for what I'm going to say, of course, we are going to go to the negative more than the positive, because that has been the way that we have been educated. And
It's really sad.
our subconscious mind, which runs just programs, is just
Yes.
going to go to that all of the time. How can we try to get more into the conscious mind, the conscious part of our mind? Because most of the day we are living in automatic pilot, and that automatic
Yes.
pilot is mostly made out of that negative thought patterns, or those ideas and beliefs that are not that conducive to being connected and being kind and compassionate to ourselves and to others.
And
So
that's in the subconscious.
yes, and most of us live there most of the day. The way to change this, and this comes, from an energetic standpoint or from a neuroscientific standpoint, it comes from an understanding that we can actually change. Like my brain is plastic enough so that I can have the creation of the new thought patterns and the new neurons that are going to get fatter, and the fatter that they get, the more electricity that goes through them. So the
Yeah.
more that I repeat and repeat something that I believe that is positive, then that is going to eventually get to that place. Now, this means that at the beginning, if we are using the repetition model, that can take time. So
Yeah.
we need to have discipline. We need to understand, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to not do? And where am I going? And
Mhm.
having that focus, like I have, for example, even though I have been doing this working with myself for the last 17 years, I still do the work every single day.
Yeah.
I wake
Me
up,
too.
I do, as soon as I wake up, the first thing that as I do when I wake up, I repeat in my mind the words love, peace, and light. Love, peace, and light. Love, peace, and light.
Yeah.
I don't check my phone as soon as I wake up. I do that. I
Yeah.
get up. I move my body. I go and I have a few post-its on the wall with some different affirmations of the things
Hmm.
that I'm thankful for.
Positive affirmations.
Yes, I repeat that. Thank you for this beautiful life. Thank you for the love in my life. Bringing awareness
Yeah.
to the things that I have, even the things that I don't yet have, or that I believe that I don't have. I
Yeah.
thank for that. And when I do that, then I can start to bring that into the awareness of the conscious and the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind. When we do that repetition, eventually we're going to get that to be the automatic pilot. The reason why I've been able to do what I do and not get stressed is because I created this new habit and these new patterns.
Yep.
What can we do if we want a quick fix? A lot of times that doesn't exist, unfortunately, but it's seeking for
Thank
help.
you.
Yes, it's seeking for help sometimes. and getting that guidance and getting someone to hold you accountable for. Having someone that is keeping you accountable, especially someone that is not your family, that is not your parents,
I
that it's
agree.
not
Accountability.
your siblings, someone that you know, for example, like if you're putting some money into it, whether that is $5 or whether that is $10,000, it doesn't matter. You are paying, you are going to want to make your money, to get your money's worth, and you are going to have someone that is keeping you accountable for what you're doing. Noticing that in our mind, the biggest thing is that we are going to get to those doubts. We are going to get to that self sabotage.
Yeah.
But the more that I know that that's going to happen, the more that I can be with that. And I
Yeah.
can be thankful for my mind that wants to protect me. Because my mind
Yeah.
is not against me. My mind just wants me to survive. And what it knows is how the previous generations that are the ones that model these behaviors in my mind, they survived because of that. So then my mind is like, oh, this is happening, whether that is an internal thing or something from my environment is happening. My mind is
Yeah.
going to be, I want to survive. So it's going to kick in with those thoughts and those beliefs. Can I actually be thankful to my mind or to my ego or to whatever we want to call that little voice inside of
Yeah.
our head? Can I be
Your id,
thankful?
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, can I be thankful for what is it coming? What is it saying? Because I want to have a relationship with myself that is kind, that is of compassion. So can I be okay with that? At the same time, what I was saying before about the repetition. I actually talked with someone and they said something that was really interesting. The fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
which
We've
is
heard
which
that here.
which is
Yes.
really good. This person actually said, be it till you are it. And that is, for me, that is really different. They are quite similar, but it's
Yeah.
quite different. One, the faking it, you don't believe that you are that. But when I am something, when I believe that I am, positive, that I am loved, that I am compassionate, I am kind, I am strong, I am, empowered, all of these different
Yeah.
things, whether that in a sense is real or not, the more that I can bring that into my awareness, into my consciousness, the more that my body is going to react to that. So, for example, my position of how I am all of the time tells a lot about that. I think that a lot of people have seen those power poses. I don't know if in the video is going to be easy, but the Wonder Woman posture, that
Yeah.
actually, that is not only like because it's Wonder Woman, that creates so many chemical reactions in our bodies because of the posture, because what that represents in the body is, open chest, tall,
Yeah.
strong, empowered. That
Hmm.
is giving my mind all of the signals to be like, this is the time to release all of these different chemicals. The more that I'm able to do that, that helps, instead of being the entire day, with the phone here and just slouching and like that.
Yeah.
That is not
Exactly.
empowered. This is
Correct.
empowered. And this
Yes.
is not, my one of my teachers, he said, be a royal peacock for a few minutes every single day. It's not for anybody else. It's about you. Just go around in your room and be like, like I am this royal peacock, and just going to be that, because that brings energy.
Yes.
And it's
It does
small stuff
bring it.
like that that makes a difference.
No, I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this knowledge and teaching us how to find balance and live consciously. And I know you have a coaching program. Do you coach all over the world
Yes.
internationally?
Yes,
Okay. Can
I
you tell
do.
people where to find you?
Definitely. Thank you for that. I do. I run programs, whether it's individual or in groups, on consciousaction.co.nz or conscious action NZ as New Zealand, or find me by my name online, Brian Berneman, and you can see all of the different offerings that I have in the services. And all that I want to do is to actually be of service to others, because I have been blessed in this life to
Yeah.
be able to have this support and this understanding from a young age. And I
Yeah.
wish that we can all get to that point. And just as a last note, if someone speaks in Spanish as well, I do this in Spanish.
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much. We'll also put your information in our show notes. Thank you for joining us today
Thank you,
and giving
Franchell.
us this knowledge. It was very helpful and useful.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Franchell.